All right. Well, we may have to wait to see what's UA's role is with the Philadelphia Union, but we don't have to wait to hear about this game this upcoming weekend because we've got our very own from CHGO Fire joining us now to help preview Saturday's matchup to open up MLS play. Our very own Alex Campbell. Welcome, Alex. Nice to have you here. I'm curious to know your initial thoughts on this matchup. Of course, it is the season opener. Home opener for the Union at Subaru Park, which should be a great crowd and great turnout. What are your initial thoughts about this matchup in terms of what you expect? Fire Union Game 1.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. Really happy to be here and return the favor from JP yesterday on our show. Yeah, it's really hard to say due to the way MLS worked things out. Only two of the Fire's four or five preseason matches were able to be viewed online, so that limits how much you can really know. And of course, none of the ones that we were able to watch involved Kellen Acosta, who was training with the team but did not get to play with them until their final friendly against Portland over last weekend. And of course, Hugo Kuipers, the new designated player number 9, was not available for preseason at all. So it's really hard to say what this team is going to look like, especially given that head coach Frank Klopas is more of a vibes guy than he is a very specific tactics guy. So I think Fire fans in general aren't really sure what we're going to see Saturday. It's believed Acosta is going to play. As for Kuipers, who knows? He'll have had a few days of training under his belt by then, but tough to say. I think the bigger question is how are the Union going to look coming off a midweek trip down to Costa Rica that obviously expended a whole bunch of energy for better and for worse as they got that 3-2 win. So I think it's a lot of unknowns going to this weekend. What are the Fire going to look like? Is it going to be anything different than last year? And what Union team do we see? Does Jim Curtin rotate at all? Do guys look tired? I think there's just so many unknowns for Saturday's match.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alex, what's going on? Long time no talk, brother. It's good seeing you, man. Appreciate you coming in here. But so obviously that's the $1 million question. That was one of the big concerns after last year with Leagues Cup and all just the different tournaments and competition we had to play last year. Fatigue was an issue. So we're gonna figure that out, I guess, here early on in the season with this hectic schedule. But Alex, we kind of talked about it a little bit yesterday when we were on SGO Fire. But look, for the Chicago Fire, you guys are no strangers to spending money. You guys have dished out the dough, something we kind of wished did a little more here in Philly. But listen, the difference is, though, like, we don't spend a lot of money, but we succeed on the pitch. You guys have spent a lot of money, hasn't succeeded as much. You guys spent a lot of money again this past offseason. So, Alex, what's the difference this time? Why is it going to be different now that you guys have spent that dough?
I think that's the big question because when you look at the way a lot of people have talked about this team in the offseason and thought about their projections for this season, the general comment is these moves all seem smart, but they're being made by the same front office that has made some not very smart moves, which sporting director Georg Heitz even said, which came as a bit of a surprise in the introductory press conference the other day for Hugo Kuipers and Kellen Acosta. He said that, yeah, I've made mistakes and those have been costly, and it's taken time for us to kind of get away from those. So it's hard. I think even Heights would say to have anybody's open trust at this point, given the type of lack of success really that the team have had. But I mean, I think the encouragement you can take is that this offseason could not have gone much better. They somehow got out of Jairo Torres' contract, arguably the worst designated player in MLS history. There's in terms of money spent and lack of impact. He did not have a single goal nor assist in his year and a half as a member of that team. Spent as much time out injured as he did playing. But you look at a guy like Hugo Kuipers. This is a guy who won the Belgian Golden Boot last season. Was a little slower so far this year, but underlying numbers still good. Kellen Acosta, USMNT peripheral player, but MLS veteran. You look at what they did at the fullback spots with Andrew Gutman coming back home, Chase Gasper's depth. Alan Aragoni comes in from Lugano, the sister club in Switzerland. There's a lot of things that just make sense, and they're the sort of moves that the Fire just didn't make before. It does feel like, though, as much as all of this makes sense, it is a bit of a Hail Mary because if this is another offseason of new players who do not make a discernible impact on the pitch, you can't imagine ownership is going to be willing to chip in a lot more money, especially not after they just spent $12 million on Kuipers. And, the front office, Georg Heitz, the sporting director, and his assistant, Sebastian Pelzer, were given contract extensions this offseason. It's not just that they're back. So this team, whether, I don't know what the goal is, whether it's make the playoffs, have a home playoff game, whatever the goal is, if this season looks a lot like last year, you're going to struggle to get ownership or fans to really have any patience left.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, bottom of the conference, bottom of the league in a number of, not only standings-wise, but a number of different categories and areas. As you mentioned, the Fire had a number of departures this offseason, including Jairo Torres, a few other names across the roster, and then bringing in someone like Hugo, bringing in Kellen as well. You mentioned there's a lot of unknowns. You don't know what this group's going to look like. But what do you anticipate? Because right now, that's all it seems like we've got to go off of. Of course, the Fire did have some preseason games, but as you mentioned, and as we've complained about, it's very difficult to be able to watch preseason games and get a good gauge on what the guys look like ahead of their official MLS play. What is it about this group that you're anticipating? Obviously, they're a hungry team. They're drastically wanting to be better in league play. Sometimes that in itself is enough to help a team become more competitive and surprise some teams. What is it that you anticipate about their style of play and that you can kind of piece together as to how they might look Saturday?
I think the one thing fans can expect this season, and anybody watching the Fire, is a team. I don't want to necessarily say they're going to be a better attacking team, but they're going to be a team more interested in attacking more than they were last year. Just the last couple of years, really, a whole lot of 4-4-2, dropping deep in defense, and then trying to hit long balls on the counter, and it never really worked. Not enough touches on the ball for guys like Xherdan Shaqiri and young up-and-comer Brian Gutierrez. So I think what to watch is this team the year that Brian Gutierrez, who's pushing to make the Olympic team for the U.S. men, is this the year he takes a big step forward? Is the addition of someone like Kuipers the sort of thing that can get the best out of Xherdan Shaqiri, who, again, if you want to talk about MLS contracts that have not gone well, $8.5 million per year for Shaqiri is arguably not been a particularly beneficial investment. But, Chris Mueller's coming back off a season-long injury last year. What does his return and impact look like? So I think that's really the thing. I think, and the Fire showed this at the beginning of last year, and I'd argue their personnel defensively has gotten better. If they want to bunker and try to nil-nil you, they can do that. But that's not what anybody wants to see. That's not what this team wants to be. It's not what Frank Klopas wants this team to be. So, yeah, again, it's hard to say, given that, again, I would be shocked if Hugo Kuipers is starting on Saturday. It would be fun, but I think that's much more likely a 20, 30 minutes off the bench kind of situation for him this weekend, and then full go at home next Saturday against Cincinnati. But I think that's the biggest thing is Frank Klopas, he was a striker in his career. He's had a full offseason now as the head coach. He is fully steering the ship. I'd assume his biggest imprint is this team is going to do more, or at least try to do more going forward, because it felt for long stretches last year like they just, not only were they not very good at attacking, they weren't particularly interested in doing it either.
Yikes.
I guess I have to ask this question for fun here. So what's the worst Chicago contract, Shaqiri or Seth Jones?
Oh, God.
So I think Shaqiri's an overpay. There's no doubt about it. He is, in terms of what he has produced in MLS, $8.5 million is too much. However, I still think the worst contract decision is actually probably extending Kasper Shabilko an extra year. No offense to everybody in Philly, but at some point he was traded from Philly to Chicago, had his contract intact, and at some point after they knew he had taken back problems had flared up, he was given an extra year, which required them to use the buyout on him to send into Lugano. So in terms of decisions that at the time they were made the least amount of sense, it's got to be Shabilko. But if it's Shaqiri or Jairo Torres, I think it's just got to be Jairo, because even though Shaqiri has not produced at the level you'd want, he has at least produced. He has done some things. He has at times been a net positive for the Fire, and Jairo Torres was never a net positive at any point for the Fire. And I don't think that's all his fault. He came in off the back of playing a crazy number of minutes in his last season at Atlas when they won their first title in forever in Liga MX. But no, the Jairo Torres designated player signing, that's an all-time whiff.
Right. So on a serious note, though, Alex, so I don't think you guys will struggle to score, but I feel like you guys are going to struggle defending. What is the word out? Like, how are you guys feeling about the Chicago defense in 24?
That's kind of the open question, that if the Fire do become a more attacking team, what are they sacrificing on the other end? It's hard to know. They've signed Tobias Sahlqvist, a veteran center back. I think he's 28 years old, from Denmark, where he played for Silkeborg IF, which is his hometown club. He's been a mainstay there a very long time. Again, he's expected to partner German veteran at the heart of the defense. Andrew Gutman on the left, you kind of know what you're going to get. He's, I think everybody would agree in Chicago, an upgrade on Miguel Navarro, who just, his attacking output wasn't consistent enough, and defensively he was far too prone to errors. Actually, the last 2 seasons in a row, he has given away a penalty on decision day that put the nail in the Fire's playoff coffin. So hopefully that streak comes to an end. The real question mark is Alan Aragoni, who the new presumed starting right back from Lugano. It's a bit of a logjam at that position right now. Arnaud Souquet came in, Ligue 1 in France, veteran at the beginning of last year. Halfway through the season, he had been benched for Jonathan Dean, who was signed from USL Championship Birmingham City and not expected to be a big contributor. In the second half of the season, he was the starting right back. Souquet is still on the roster. Aragoni is expected to start. The other thing that's expected to be a big plus is Kellen Acosta, in whatever role he is expected to play, or asked to play, I should say, is going to provide that midfield much more steel than they had last year. They were just far too easy to play through. So I think the Fire's defensive concerns were almost more about the midfield than they are about the defense. And so I think whether he's playing as an out-and-out 6 or more as an 8, Kellen Acosta should massively help them be a better transition defense team.
All right, all right. Well, Alex, appreciate you taking time to join us. I'm tempted to ask, and I'm curious. I don't even know if you'll have an answer to this, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyways, because why not? What are your predictions about this game? This is my final question for you. I know you guys have talked about it on your show. We've obviously been talking about it on our show. You're probably going to have a similar answer to the one that I've had, so I'm interested to see if we're on the same page. What are some maybe a score prediction as to how you see this game going Saturday?
I think both teams, all I'll say is I think both teams are going to score in this game. I think we're going to see, regardless of the team Philly puts out, I think it's expected that they are going to be leggy. When we hit that 60-minute, 70-minute mark, there's going to be some jet lag and some tiredness kicking in there. As for a score, I mean, my gut says something along the lines of 2-1 Philly, but I could also see a 2-2, a 3-2. I think given the Fire's eagerness, I mean, the guys have talked so much about they just want to get out there. They're looking forward to the games. They want to show what they think they can do. I think this game is going to be probably Philly dominant early, but as the game goes on, I think the Fire claw back into it. So I'll be a little optimistic then, I guess. I think the Fire go on the road and get a 2-2 draw in a game that both teams are going to have positives to say, but also plenty of negatives, as Philly gets set to host Saprissa back at your guys' home stomping grounds there at Subaru Park for the reverse leg of that fixture. So yeah, I think the Fire grind out a draw by taking advantage of Philly struggling to get through the 90 minutes near the end.